Welcome back to Rüniverse. I'm Andrew, and this is the 8th and final episode of the Prism Tour series. And this time we are looking at Ruby, which normally comes first in the color order, but in this case is going to be the last of our Prism Tour stops. So this is the red facet, and its focus traits are Rage, Lizard, and Fire. And here we have a representative mage for each of those three focus traits. And just like previous entries in the series, I'm going to be assigning mechanical identities to those focus traits, even when they might not be a perfect match. But Rage is going to be about controlling the board a little bit, about making creatures tasked, unable to guard, or untasked and ready to attack again. Lizard is just going to be the creature-y grouping here for Ruby, and Fire is pretty much direct damage. There's a lot of direct damage. So, in fact, let's get started with that. So we'll start things off strong with Blaze, which attacks for 8, which basically means it's going to deal 8 damage to a creature or a mage or a relic, anything that can be attacked. Blaze can hit it for 8, which in most cases is probably going to be overkill, but in some cases you might need it. We'll see some variants on that later on. Next up is Boomstick. So this is a relic that costs 0. So for 0, you can put it into play, and relics do not enter tasked. So you can use its Boom ability right away to task it and pay 6 power to have it attack for 8. So this is a recurable 8 damage attack if you can pay 6 for it each time. We've got Ember Bore, which is a nice standby here. This is a fire creature. It's level 1 and it has heat. It says an attack for 2 and dispel me. This is an activated ability. So if you evoke it for 1, it's going to come into play. It doesn't do anything. But if you want to, you can use its activated ability. You could even use it immediately because it doesn't require being tasked or untasked in order to pay for that cost. There's no cost. You just have it attack for 2. That means it's going to deal 2 damage to something and then dispel the Ember Bore. If the Ember Bore were to have some Vim on it, you could, for example, if it had 2 face down Vim, as we know, Vim means if it would die or if it would be dispelled, instead it loses 1 Vim. So you could have it use heat, attack for 2, dispel it, which results in it losing 1 Vim. You could attack for 2 again, and then attack for 2 again, or maybe even attack normally, a combat attack, and then use heat again and have it dispel itself. So it's not really normal that you see an Ember Bore with Vim, but that is a little bit of a machine gun strategy you could do if you wanted to. Next up is the powerful Fire form, and in fact, this is powerful enough that it needs a nerf. So if you've got this card, maybe just know that it's more powerful than it should be. If you build around flame counters, especially, this card can be a very broken element of that deck. If you play it without flame counter backup, or with not much flame counter backup, it might be okay. Probably would change it to give you only 1 flame counter when you evoke it, and the mage doesn't immediately become untasked, because what it does is it's going to give Fire Battle Mage Flame to the mage that it becomes attached to. And that is a weird syntax of a name, but basically Battle Mage is the most important part. Fire just means the mage is going to have the fire trait while it is in fire form. So if there were a card that cared about a trait of a card, that would matter. As things are, that fire part you can basically ignore. The flame part, however, is important because the number that comes after Battle Mage is how big the Battle Mage is going to be. And in this case, the flame is a variable that refers to how many flame counters do you have. And as we see, Fire form immediately gives you 2. And when the last ability, Flame attacks, is before I attack, you get a flame counter. So if you have a mage that is in fire form, and then you attack with that mage, flame attack will immediately give you a flame counter. So you'll have 2, or maybe nerf down to 1, but let's say 2, and then you attack and you immediately get a 3rd. So the first time you attack with your Battle Mage, it's going to be as a level 3 creature, because Battle Mage lets a mage attack and be attacked as though it were a creature of a particular level. And in this case, it's how many flame counters do you have. So the flame attack means you're growing your flame counters and you're growing your Battle Mage, which is great. That's what the card is supposed to do. It's supposed to key off how many other flame counters you have. And I just realized I'm talking a lot about flame counters. I haven't said what a flame counter is. Basically, there are cards that can give you flame counters, and then you have them. There's currently no limit on how many flame counters you can have, although I'm thinking about 9 or 10. But that's all it is. It's just a tracker. How many flame counters do you have? And if you pick up any of the starter sets, you're going to get a cardstock Punch-Out flame counter. It's going to have 1 on one side and 2 on the back. So you can track 1, 2, or then maybe it's 1 and 3. Not sure. But you could use dice to track up a higher value of flame counters. And if you get the deluxe acrylic token set, you get a token, a thicker acrylic token that looks like this. And you can put a die inside to track how many flame counters you have. But regardless of how you track it, a flame counter is just a number. It's just how many do you have. So Fire Form is going to care about it because it's how big the battle mage is. And again, for battle mages, if the creature is, or the mage can be attacking as a creature with level equal to the battle mage value. And also when that mage is attacked, like if your opponent wants to attack in and break a bond, the mage is going to deal back damage equal to their battle mage level. So it can really punish smaller attackers. Like if you have battle mage 3, let's say you play this, you get 2, you attack immediately, and now it's a level 3. And now in your opponent's turn, they attack in with a level 3 against this mage. They do get to break a bond because they dealt 3 to it, but that creature also takes 3 damage in return and is going to be dispelled. And if they attack with, say, a level 1 creature, 1 is not enough damage to dispel a level 3 battle mage, and so they do not break a bond, and their attacker will be dispelled. Now they need to follow up with at least another 2 damage in order to actually break a bond, with, again, the battle mage dealing reciprocal damage each time. So battle mage is a very powerful effect, and thus Fire Form is a very powerful card. Hence the subtle nerfs down to 1 flame counter and not untasking would be recommended if you have a copy of this card. Next up is Flame Tusk Bore, so level 2, and it has trigger lash 2. When I'm evoked, I attack for 2. So basically you pay 2, comes into play tasked, and that lash 2 occurs. It's going to deal 2 damage to anything. So again, it's just an attack. Doesn't take any damage in return because it wasn't a combat attack. It's just dealing 2 damage out to something. Next up, we've got Flare Mote, another creature that can deal damage, but only if you have a fire focus, and then it would give you a flame counter. So again, we're just tracking how many do you have, and then it gets to attack for that number. So maybe it's just for 1 if you just got 1. If you have 3 now, then it's going to attack for 3. Make a bigger attack, take out a creature when you use Flame Lash, Fire Lash after evoking the Flare Mote. But again, only if you have been evoked by a fire mage. Then we've got the spell called Heat. That's what the Ember Bore's ability is named after. It's just a level 1 spell that attacks for 2, just straight up 2 damage, common. We've got Immolate, which is a level 3 spell, says you get a flame counter, and then it attacks for 3 plus however many flame counters you have. So if you want a slightly cheaper Blaze, if you want to do a bunch of damage but you don't need 8, maybe you don't need the Blaze, you can play Immolate instead and start building up your flame counters. Next up is the rare Magma Fan, and this is the second of 2 cards I illustrated in the base set. So it's actually an Andrew original here. It's a level 9 creature that has 2 abilities. It costs, first of all, let's look at Emergent Flame. It costs 1 less for each flame counter you have. So it's going to be a level 9 creature, but you might only have to pay 8, 7, 6, 5 for it, powered, depending on how many flame counters you've collected so far. So let's look at the first ability, which is an activated ability, which says reveal it from your hand and pay 2 power. Normally, a card's abilities wouldn't work from your hand, but it specifically references being in your hand. So it does work from your hand, and you can pay 2 power and reveal it to attack a creature for 1 damage, and you get a flame counter. But you can only use a flame spray ability once per turn. So once per turn, you can reveal the Magma Fan, basically say it's coming, and pay 2 power and deal 1 damage. Even if the damage doesn't really get anything done, it might be nice just to get that flame counter, and it could be good for the cost reduction and as well as other cards like the Immolate or the Fire Form. Next up, we have Pent Eruption, a level 5 uncommon spell, costs 5, and it can attack up to 5 creatures for a total of 5 damage, divided as you choose. So you also get to ignore guards. So you can hit the guard, but you can also hit things that aren't guarding. However you like, you could potentially take out multiple creatures with that, so they're smaller. We've got Rift Burn, another way to take out small creatures on a recurring basis this time. So it's a level 3 spell that's going to become attached to an enemy rift. And at the start of that mage's phase, every turn it's going to hit one of their creatures for 3. Now, because that trigger is occurring during their turn, that your opponent will get to select which of their creatures gets hits for 3. But as long as they've got level 3 or smaller creatures, hopefully you can be taking one of them out each turn. And finally, for the fire category, we have Three-Tail Fox. It's a level 3 creature, and it has Sorcery 3. That means your spells that attack for 3 more damage. So your 1 cost heat becomes 5. Your Blaze becomes 11, if that wasn't overkill enough already, and so on. So if you just want a creature that can buff your attacks There you go. With fire out of the way, we will look at Rage. So we can see first, let's look back at Rashly. So she is the Rage Focus Mage. She also has the Ruby Gift. So again, the Ruby Gift shows up on mages of each of the 3 different focus traits, but here is the Rage Mage. And I've assigned the Ruby Gift to the Rage mechanical grouping for this video. But it basically says an opponent's cards stop guarding and can't guard until their next turn. So if it's currently their turn, they won't be able to assign guards at the end of that turn. And if it is your turn, then their cards will stop guarding immediately for you to be able to get in for attack. So either way, it's basically taking away guards for one of your turns for attacking, which plays into the aggressive strategy of Ruby, one of the most aggressive colors, if not the most. And so this is a way to get in there. If your opponent's built up some defenses, this just wipes away those defenses. So next up, we've got Aggressive Urge. It's a level 2 spell that attaches as Vim to a creature. So if the creature attached to it would be dispelled, it loses its Vim instead. But while it is attached, it's going to give Aggressive 3 to the creature, meaning it attacks for 3 more damage. So it can take out bigger creatures on the opponent's side of the board, but just attaching as Vim is nice too, just giving another life to your attackers. And this does have the Rage trait, but I also put it in this category just because it supports the attacking strategy. So it's not direct damage like we saw in Fire, and it's not a creature itself necessarily, it's more support for the aggressive strategy. So next up we have Burning Stare, which is very similar to the Ruby Gift, but it's a level 3 spell that says all of a mage's creatures stop guarding this turn. So it might just take out 1 guard, but if your opponent has multiple guards, like with Taunt, it can take out more than 1 of them. Then we've got Egg of Endless Magma. So as a level 0 creature, it does not do the attacking thing very well. But with Flaming Motivation, you can task it to untask an ally. So getting the ability to attack twice with an ally creature can be very good, or it can basically give haste or drive to one of your creatures by letting you, say if you play this on your first turn, on your second turn you play a level 2 creature, the egg can task to give Flaming Motivation to that creature, and then it will be able to attack the same turn it was played. So even though it can't attack, it can still be very valuable for the attacking strategy. Similarly, we have Inspire that does the same thing. It's just a level 0 spell, immediately untasked one of this mage's creatures. So they're both level 0. The egg can do it every turn, but it also can't do it the turn you evoke it because it's going to enter tasked. So having Inspire around to kind of come out as a surprise is nice. The egg, you've got to play it, and your opponent might very well kill it. They can attack it and before you get to use it as much as you like. Then we've got Lurching Raptor, which could be in the next category, which is just going to be the lizard category, which is just going to be creatures doing creaturey things. This is, in fact, a lizard as a dinosaur, and it is a creature doing creaturey things. But because of Drive, I put some of these other untasking cards into this category, so I felt like maybe it fits in here as an early attacker, but really it could go either way. And then same exact situation here with Rage Mote, except it actually does have the Rage trait this time, but it has Rage Drive, so its haste is conditional on being evoked by a Rage Mage. And our last grouping is going to be the lizard category. So let's kick it off with a big lizard, a dragon, the Burning Dragon, level 4. So it's a little bit awkward to evoke at 4, but it is big or bigger than a lot of things. And Assault says after it attacks a creature and survives, it gets untasked and gets level +1 this turn. So if you're able to evoke it and untask with it, it's able to take out perhaps your opponent's entire side of the board if they have small things. So sometimes it does have to stop after 2 or 3 attacks because of the fact that damage it's receiving in return is going to be stacking up. But for example, let's say you attacked a level 1 creature, the level 1 creature would die, Burning Dragon would become untasked, and now it's level 5 for the turn with 1 damage on it. So now you could attack your opponent's level 3 creature, Burning Dragon survives, so it untasks, and now it goes up to level 6 for the turn, but it's now up to 4 damage. So now if it attacks a level 2 creature, the Burning Dragon is going to die in return, but maybe that's the perfect time to just go directly at the mage, assuming they have no more taunt creatures or guards or whatever. So Burning Dragon can take out, or if they're level 1s, it can just take out all of them because it's getting level 1 every time. This is a great way to wipe out an opposing army of small creatures. Then we've got Lizard Mote, which fits great into the lizard category here, level 2, just lizard, just basic creature. It's gets a +1 counter if the mage has a lizard focus. So not a lot going on here, but it can be a 2 cost for a 3 creature. We've got Rex Imp, which is a level 2 creature that has aggressive 3, so it attacks for 5 damage, so it can definitely trade up. We've got Inferno Ram. So I put this in the lizard category as a creature doing creaturey things, but this is a very much a fire card. In fact, this is an extremely fire tribal card. So if you want to build a fire themed deck with all fire cards, the Inferno Ram goes straight in there. But again, I'm put in the lizard category because it's basically just a creature. It's just potentially extremely big with the right synergies. So it's a level 1, so you can play it on the first turn, but you want to have it evoked by a fire mage. If it doesn't get evoked by a fire mage, it's going to be a lot less exciting. But the flame up ability says, when I join and after my mage plays a fire card, if my mage is a fire focus, you get a flame counter. So again, we're talking about those flame counters, but because of the Inferno ability, it gets level +1 for each flame counter you do have. And that means the Inferno Ram can get big really quickly. I've seen it be like level 12 or something. That's what is the card that made me think maybe I do need a cap on how many flame counters you can have, just because the Inferno Ram can be so big. But then again, maybe that's fine for Inferno Ram to just be massive. But the fact that it only costs 1 makes it pretty powerful, and it lets you rack up those flame counters really quick with a deck built around it. But it does come down to the luck of, did you draw a fire traded mage in your opening hand? Because a fire focused mage is required to really get the Ram going and start building up those flame counters. If you don't have the fire mage on your first turn to bring out the Ram, you might find yourself holding this until you maybe draw a fire mage, but maybe you don't draw a fire mage. So that is part of the luck of going for that strategy. And then we'll round it out by looking at the Ruby evolution chain and the pack art card for Ruby booster deck packs. And this is, again, part of the lizard category, kind of, but again, similar to the Inferno Ram, at the top level, we're actually going to be looking at another fire themed card, although the beginning and middle forms don't really care about fire. So these are creatures doing creaturey things, but we're wanting to play with fire. The base set of Ruby is definitely pretty fire focused. So first of all, we just have Kittle. So similar to the Rex Imp, it's just a smaller version. Instead of a level 2 with +3 damage, it's a level 1 with +2 damage, so it can trade up. But really, you probably want to keep your Kittles around to be able to evolve into Flariger. So it has Kittle Evolve, meaning as it's evoked, you can you can replace one of your Mage's Kittles, or specifically the Mage that's evoking the Flariger. If that same mage has a Kittle, you can, instead of evoking the Flariger as a separate creature, you can evoke the Flariger on top of the Kittle. And if you do, you get a cost reduction of 4-1, so you only have to pay 3 power. And the Kittle will become Vim for the Flariger, which means 2 things. First of all, again, if Flariger were to be dispelled, it would instead lose one of its Vim. And as long as it has this face-up Vim, the Flariger will inherit the abilities of the Kittle, so Flariger will have aggressive 2. Or, if you want, I mean, like you said, you can just play the Flariger and ignore the Evolve. But if you do have this evolution stack, you're going to have a creature that has aggressive 2 and Deft. And we've seen Deft before. I forget if we saw it in Ruby. But Deft is an ability that means it deals its damage first while attacking and receives none if the defender is dispelled. So if you have a Flariger and you attack a level 4 Flariger into a level 4 enemy creature, Flariger is going to deal 4, dispel the enemy creature, and not receive any damage in return, and be able to survive that attack. If you have Kittle as its Vim, though, if you've evolved, then it's going to have aggressive 2 in addition. So now when you attack, you're actually attacking for 6 damage. So now the Flariger can attack into a pretty big creature, level 6 or lower creature, deal its damage first with Deft, and receive none in return. Which is all well and good, but if you've got the third evolution here, Sabraze, again, we can evolve from Flariger, so you can ignore the Kittle. If you just play a Flariger and then later evolve it into Sabraze, that's fine. You'll just miss out on one of the Vim, and you'll miss out on aggressive 2. But if you've got the whole evolution chain, so you're going to pay 1 for Kittle, maybe next turn you pay 3 for Flariger, and next turn you pay 1 for Sabraze. Or you could even do it on the same turn. You could even do it all at once. Pay 1 for Kittle, pay 3 for Flariger, and pay 1 for Sabraze all at once. It's just going to add up to 5. And actually, I've seen that done, and it is pretty powerful to play these all at once because Flariger has the ability to become untasked and potentially attack the same turn it was played. But if you do evolve later on, that's fine too. It just means you're going to be able to attack multiple times each time you untask it. So let's look at how we can do that. So Flariger Evolve, we just talked about. Fire Vim says, after a fire card is put into your discard pile, if it wasn't Vim, it becomes my face down Vim. So the Sabraze can get more Vim just by having fire synergies. If you're playing a lot of fire cards, or if you have fire creatures that leave play, Sabraze doesn't even care what location. That doesn't have to be the same location because it's looking at the discard pile. So if it sees any fire cards go to your discard pile, as long as they weren't Vim, they will become Sabraze's Vim. So for example, do we have any fire cards? Yeah, so if you had an Inferno Ram and you had a Sabraze, or let's say you played all of these in the same turn, like I said, you got an Inferno Ram, for some reason it's not that big, you attack, and the Inferno Ram trades with the enemy creature, so the Inferno Ram is dispelled in the attack. That is now a fire card that went into your discard pile, so it will come back as face down Vim for your Sabraze. And Vim is nice for Sabraze to have because of its third ability, Brutality. It says discard one of my Vim in order to untask me. So you've now got this situation. You can now discard one of its Vim to untask it. And because it has aggressive 2, it's level attacking for 7 damage. Because it has deft, it won't receive any damage if it dispels the thing it attacks. So you maybe attack for 7, but you really want to attack again. So you discard another one of its Vim. Now you don't have aggressive 2 anymore because you just discarded the Kittle, but you're untasked and you can attack for 5. And maybe you want to attack again. So boom, boom. You still had deft before, by the way, so you didn't take any damage. Still, after making 3 attacks, and you attack one more time for another 5. And if you are able to put more fire cards into your discard pile that turn, perhaps you're playing heats or immolates and so on, these fire spells, you can immediately buff up the Sabraze with more Vim. Anyway, thanks for watching my Prism tour. Hopefully you've watched all 8. This is the 8th of the 8 episodes there. Get to know Rüniverse cards a little bit better. Let me know which cards from Ruby were your favorites, which strategies you want to play with. There are definitely some Thist cards. So even though Thist is purple, it's at the end of the color wheel, so to speak. It is adjacent to Ruby for the purposes of deck construction, so you can mix the red and purple facets if you're playing with Ruby mages or Thist mages. If you're playing with Ruby mages, you can also play all the Trine cards you want. So let me know what synergies you would find interesting to build in a deck, which Ruby cards were your favorite. Stay tuned for more Rüniverse content, even though this series is over. Subscribe so we can get more subscribers, and bye.